So it's finally here, and it's quite the splitter between the lovers and the haters. So let's dive in and find out what's really going on in Haken's fourth studio album. Affinity by Haken. So as you guys all know, I love Haken. They have put out 3 beautiful works of music, and I've reviewed all of them, so after this video, perhaps you want to take a look at them. And with the 4th installment, what do we really have? We have quite a diversion of their typical sound, and I'm not surprised with this. Each album that they've put out has definitely differed from the last. Each one has progressed their music forward in some scope. Sometimes the scale was larger, sometimes it was a little withdrawn. This one definitely sees a little bit more of a withdrawn approach, but there is definitely a style shift going on as well. And for most people, it seems that they either love this album and are astounded by it, or they're not connecting with it and they're quite disappointed. And it looks like you're either in one of the 2 camps. And for me, I'm in the latter. I am actually a little bit disappointed with this release. Now, that's not to say that I didn't thoroughly enjoy this album. So I'm actually going to get into both what I liked about this album and what I didn't like about this album, and kind of talk to you about that. So first off, what I liked. I liked the fact that they incorporated this very 80s sound to their music. Kind of that synth pop that we heard back in the 80s, with a lot of guitars kind of leading the room. So I really like that new approach, and I like the sounds that they're giving within this album as well. That 80s feel is definitely felt throughout a lot of the songs here. Definitely in 1985. I mean, that song alone could have been lifted right out from the 80s, but it's blended very well with a lot of modern techniques and a lot of modern styles. Another aspect that I really enjoy about this album is their use of that synthesized noise, and this is really felt within The Endless Knot, which is probably my favorite song off of this album. This style was really felt within their previous album of The Mountain with In Memoriam. There's this piece of jam session that is so well constructed that it's hard not to just bask in the glory of what's going on. It's very fast and it's very heavy hitting. It's very much like a roller coaster that's very, very short, but very, very intense. If it were going any longer, you'd probably start to just feel overwhelmed. So that concise approach really, really helped the band out within this song. And of course, I could not really talk about what I liked about this album without at least paying a nod to The Architect. This song is a great, great addition to the Haken library. It has just everything that I love about Haken found within it. It's got that longer stretch of jam sessions that I'm so used to, but instead of being very aggressive and very in your face, and this is even felt within a couple of the other tracks within this album, it's very subdued and it's very subtle. My favorite part of the song is actually that very subtle guitar piece that almost akins back to, say, a King Crimson, where it's like this 3/3 time that's kept throughout, but it keeps shifting and it keeps molding and it keeps changing on you. Very akin to like an architect really planning out where he's going and finding out where each piece fits perfectly and then changing it just slightly to see if it works, and then when he finds that it does, he builds upon that even further. So using that image, it really sets the foundation for how the song progresses later on. After that, we get issued into kind of that second reprise of the main theme of the song, and I don't know, being presented to it this time around, it didn't quite hit me quite as hard, and so I was a little disappointed when I heard that the first time, but I'm glad to see that that final stretch, that really heavy-hitting closer piece of this track, did such a great job, and it's so, I don't know, it's so sad because they keep saying this dream will go on forever, almost as though you're taking each other's lives within that subject matter there. And so that was really paired well. Like, the lyrics are very paired well with the music being presented, because the music itself is very heart-wrenching. I felt like that final piece that this architect had built was just grand in scale, and it was beautiful. Okay, so now let's talk about what I didn't quite connect with. I feel like the band has met some kind of a crossroads. They've gotten to a point in their career where, since The Mountain was just an overall praised and almost this Goliath of an album, they've reached themselves to a pinnacle where they feel like they can't get any higher. Once they reach that level of almost deity-like existence, whenever we get challenged by them, it feels almost like a betrayal, and I feel like that's what's going on with a lot of fans for this particular release. And I agree to a certain extent. I mean, that was definitely my first gut reaction, was definitely that how dare you type of a thing. So that's why it took me a bit longer to really start reviewing this. So at this crossroads, after the release of The Mountain, the band kind of, now this is my own interpretation here, the band didn't quite know where to go next. Whenever anybody's faced with this, what do I do next, almost like a midlife crisis, but I guess in this sense it's a mid-band crisis, you always kind of look back to where you were in your youth or in your childhood. And I mean, that would place them very well within the 80s, which really helps kind of explain where that 80s feel from this album kind of permeates. So that makes sense. The main issue here for me is that they were also looking at the current climate within the progressive metal community, and they found what was working in there. And I know a lot of critics and a lot of reviewers have already mentioned this, but there was a lot of feel within Leprous within this album, just with the use of the guitar work and that synthesizer use. Where some people thought that it worked, for me it didn't quite mesh very well. I felt like if the band had kind of put their focus more on either sounding a little bit more like Leprous in the current, style that they've kind of developed, or look back and go into the 80s, I feel like when they tried to balance the two, it never quite balanced the scale. You were either getting one or the other, and it didn't quite blend as well as I think they would hope that it had blended. And this was really seen even within the Architect itself, that lead vocals being presented within the Architect of Lars Solberg from Leprous. And I don't know, it didn't quite work for me. And that was kind of a letdown, because a lot of this album has that style founded within it. I feel like had the band, really developed that 80s sound into a more modern prog, I feel like we could have gotten something really, really special here. Instead, what we got is just a really, really great album. And really, that's why I've got to say you've got to download this album and have it at your fingertips, because once you listen to it, you might get hooked, as I did. I know I've been returning to this album again and again and again, and with each passing listen, it does get better, although I feel like I've gotten to that point of diminishing returns. So hopefully this is going to be like a sleeper album, and after a couple of years, I'm really going to enjoy it that much more, and I hope it ages well, because it has a possibility of doing that. Unfortunately, time is only going to tell for that. And that's really about it. That's all my thoughts about Haken's Affinity. What did you guys think about this album? There's a lot to talk about it, so whatever you thought, let me know by commenting below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you feel a little bit betrayed by the band? Did you feel like they rewarded you for your loyalty? Whatever it was, again, comment below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a real treat to do. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.